Hello and welcome to The Quest on Rajya Sabha TV. I'm Rakhee Bakshee. As you know that each week we bring you a leading personality on this show, and what an interesting journey it has been to talk to them, to share their views and vision and listen to their stories. And the very special guest with us is also somebody who's really known for a fashion sense, an ace designer, a Padma Bhushan, also a Padma Shri. But somebody, I don't want to limit her identity by calling her a fashion designer. She's a textile historian and artist par excellence. I'm talking to Ms. Ritu Kumar. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure and delight to talk to you. Let's make it simple by starting about common sense of dressing. How happy you are seeing people dressing up, especially in India.
Well, India actually holds a very special place in the world. I don't think any of us are totally aware of the fact that it's the only country which has a organic fashion handwriting, which is not actually put away into a studio or an atelier. It actually is seen on a day-to-day basis on people, on the roads, in the fashion manufacturers, and this has not happened in any other part of the world which is considered developed. Basically what happens is there is a Eurocentric fashion handwriting, which is funded by the multinationals. So they actually dictate what the world wears. And if it's green is the color or red is the color, the whole world will have red shoes, green stockings, so on. In India, I was very worried that this would happen, because the minute you go into international fashion, this is a fallout, whether it's Morocco or Japan or Bangkok.
Did you see this happening ever?
All over the country, all over the world. And of course, with the younger generation, there's always this aspiration that this is what's happening in the West, and this is, the fashion victim story that all of us go through when we are younger. And a lot of times, that actually colors the complete fashion dress sense of a country.
You know, we are a Parliament TV, and I really can't help but talking about it also, that we are seeing politicians of all kinds. We are also seeing a lot of young people coming in. We are seeing a lot of women coming in. So when you look at them, and what do you think about the kind of dressing they are doing?
Well, it definitely reflects the fact that the country has options. And the options are wide and far between. You don't really have one option. You actually can follow the option of your province or your own personal inclination. And two, what most of them are doing is they're evolving their own fashion style. And actually, it's like no other. We are not wearing the three-piece pinstripe suit, but we are also not wearing it. You have a combination of a shirt and a dhoti, sometimes a cap, sometimes a bandgala. The women wear a variety of saris. It is really a very colorful way of dressing, and also, as I said, climate friendly, society friendly, and also it makes most women, I'm not so sure about the men, feel very good about themselves.
So slightly serious question here, that we're talking about a society, and I know that you're a very concerned citizen also. Talking about girls and young women, sometimes we see all these notions about how to dress. Does that also disturb you, that there are some kind of control over the way you should dress?
No, I feel that no controls should be exercised, because they are completely non-practical. In a country where a lot of young women today have options of education, and they are on the internet, they see what is happening out there, I think it should be left to their choice. And the choices may perhaps become a mix of Western and Indian dressing, which is also all right to me. But definitely in this country, you do see some character in the way people dress. We are not really victims of international fashion totally. So that is what gives me a lot of pleasure to watch.
So going into the background from where you started, and we know how humble it was, and from where you began, and you've had a long journey, how do you see fashion evolving? I mean, we are sitting here today, we are just near 2016 now. How would you look at this whole evolution of how we've looked at fashion or sense of dressing?
I think the evolution is going to follow the enormous economic gains that this country is going to get. We no longer have the colonial baggage on our back, or we don't need to. And we no longer need to feel inferior to anybody else, because that is the power of economics. And once that power comes in, you as a woman would be a thinking woman, and you would make your own choices. You're no longer feeling cowed down by any other country. And I see this country actually in the future perhaps being even more other countries being impressionable by what India is going to wear. Now, this I could never have dreamt of 10 years back.
Because, we saw you, designing for Miss Indias, and how proud we felt when we saw them walking out there on the ramp and winning all those crowns. How would you really look at now internationally how India is being accepted?
Well, when I did that Miss India, actually I had a lot of reservations on dressing somebody for a beauty ramp. I mean, it was really not part of my mindset to do that. But then I realized what they were doing. These girls were ambassadresses for the country, and I put them into every craft-related textile I could find, whether it was a bandhani or a handloom or, the ikat.
So showcasing our culture and heritage,
and
yes.
actually they became amazing marketing tools for the fact that there was in India with the amazing textile handwriting which the whole world had forgotten. They'd forgotten their own. China no longer dressed like China. The kimono is in a studio in Japan. And suddenly you had Sushmita out there in a bandhani from Thar Parkar, for heaven's sake.
How sweet.
Yeah, it was amazing. And of course they enjoyed their clothes because anywhere they went, the judge would ask them, but what are you wearing? She was not wearing a pinstripe jacket and a
Seriously,
little...
yes.
Yeah. So that became...
That was, I'm actually referring to how you mix heritage, culture, art, craft and textile together. Tell us the little secret about it all. I mean, how do you really mix, how you really bring in a serious design and understanding of our rich heritage and textile into a fashion sense?
Well, to begin with, I think you have to be very convinced that we perhaps have the most sophisticated textiles in the world. India has ruled textiles forever. Actually, the British came in here to buy the kalamkaris, to make their chintz dresses from, because they didn't know the first thing about how to print a textile. So India has always been very influential, whether it's into the Far East or to the Iran or to Europe. I mean, of course, America didn't have textiles. So India was the bedrock fabric of India was cotton. We knew how to print it, we knew how to weave it, we knew how to pattern it.
Pioneers actually, yeah.
Oh, always. It had a 3,000-year-old history. So when I approach my textiles, with a great deal of reverence, you say this is perhaps the most aesthetically sophisticated fabric that the world has ever known. Once you start with that kind of merit in something, it's not hard to translate it into a modern day lifestyle garment. And that's what I did with these girls.
When you use the word reverence, I really feel nice. But do you think that today's, and really with all due respect to all the today's designers also, would you say that this understanding should be much more, or do you think there are gaps?
I think it's such a big field that I don't feel that I have really seen it all or done it all. So the understanding will come as and when every designer feels a need to go to a textile. But at least the first step and the first foundation has been laid. It was laid by Pupu Jayakar, by Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay. We became the barefoot doctors after that who were sent into the field to further do this work. So they've had at least 35 years of a grounding given to them. At that time, India had this import thing. I couldn't import a button or a zip. So we had to actually find fastenings from within the country's repertoire. So this present day generation has already that foundation on which they can work, and they are.
So much easier, but
and also they are more in touch with these crafts, with these processes. They know what an ikat is. I didn't have a clue. They know what a bandhani is. I had to go and find it.
How do you really look at, let's say, how royals would take interest in fashion, and how a common person would look at fashion?
Well, there are two things here. The royalty in India were the biggest patrons of the best quality textiles in the country. All the patronage to the Banaras sarees or to whichever area of textile there was given by the royalty. The common man actually got the more common saree, but also still very sophisticated, the khadis and so on. In today's world, all those barriers have become demolished. The patronage is given by the normal Indian middle class to these crafts. And I don't think that you can relate fashion only to what you see on the ramp and what the papers in page 3.
So you think the class divide is actually a little diminishing now?
It's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Which is very happy.
I think it's just what the media tells you, but what it really filters down in terms of fashion is what the average person, the average young girl is wearing. And you know what she's wearing? She's wearing jeans and she wears a kurti. The kurti could be a lehriya, it could be with a little bit of zardozi. So she's finding her mix. And that's where the fashion in India I see tomorrow.
Very nice. And so you're looking at women also, and women of all kinds, and how happy we are to actually see them doing well in all positions and all careers. How would you look at these concepts of beauty, which is also being talked about, that, you know, what is real beauty for a woman?
I think the concepts of beauty also in India are going to go through a sea change. So far, it has been very dictated by a paternalistic kind of society. And, you know, there were norms of what a girl should look like, what should dress like, and the very limited options she had by way of what she should do with her life. Today, I feel very proud to see most of the people who are working with me are women, and they are perhaps all in the age group younger than 35. They are very well educated, they have a mind of their own, and they multitask like you can't believe. Now, these girls and the next generation, I hope, are not going to be prescribed to. They need to make their own confidence in their own idea of what beauty is. And I think it's terrible to have a woman totally miserable about herself all the time. I mean, to some extent, I think...
Please talk about it a little more, because, you know, we in fact remember that how we met at this summit, which was about women, and we are also talking about today's woman. And when we talk about fashion, we're not only talking about a dress, we're talking about this holistic approach to how a woman looks at life. So talk about it.
Well, I think the marketing people have done a great job of making everybody feel miserable about what they are looking like, or what skin they have, or what height they have, or what weight they have. That's part of selling products. But I think the minute a woman starts getting more confidence, she gets more of a personality, she can make her own choices. And that is the woman I look forward to seeing tomorrow. And she would perhaps make the choice as she gets older that, look, I don't want to wear this black dress. It does nothing for me. I'm going to wear this very colorful sari in the evening. Now, that is the fashion of India tomorrow.
But are you saying that patriarchy somewhere has taken a backseat, or still watching as to what women should wear and how women actually look at themselves through those prisms of patriarchy?
I think they still would like control. I mean, that has been a genetic thing for a very long time, and we are trying to upset an apple cart, which has been fairly well established. But then, of course, today's woman has education, and she has options, and she's earning. That, to me, whether it is an urban woman or the Ahir women who do embroidery, or the Zardozi women who do embroidery, the minute you open a bank account for them, everything, absolutely everything changes. Even their own perception of their own self.
How glad I am to hear all this from you, Ritu Kumar. We are taking a very short break out here. We are talking to Miss Ritu Kumar, and it's been such an interesting conversation going on, and there's so many issues that I still want to talk to her about, but I'm taking a very short break out here. Don't go away. Please watch this very interesting interview with Miss Ritu Kumar. So we are talking right now to Ms. Ritu Kumar on The Quest on Rajya Sabha TV. I'm Rakhee, Bakshee, and very interesting conversation going on, not only about fashion, about dressing, but also about how life is viewed by men and women. So let's also talk about men here. How do you think men are dressing? Are they happy dressing today?
Well, I think men have always had a situation where they had to dress according to the dictates of whoever was ruling them. I don't think they had too many options, they had to do that. And that changed. Let's say if you had to go to the Darbar in the Mughal times, there was a certain prescribed way of dressing, and people followed that. And when the British came, everybody got seriously confused. In Bengal, they used to wear a shirt with a dhoti and a three-piece suit on top, and all sorts of things happened because, you know, there was so much confusion between a traditional way of life and what was prescribed from an extremely different civilization, like England, for instance, in India. So the men had to get out there, and they had to conform to a certain office rule, dress rule, etc. There was far less confusion with the women because they were more or less at home, and a lot of them at that time were in parda, within the confines of the home. So very few of them jumped out there and was running around in a dress or a gown. They stayed with their traditional clothes, so there was a continuity. With the men, the continuity has been lost several times. And then came the bush shirt, the safari suit, which was the end as far as I was concerned, as far as fashion was concerned, because it was seriously neither here nor there.
So, textile, let me come back to that. And you've also researched so much. I mean, you're a historian, a researcher on textile. In fact, you wrote a book also. So, tell us about you're getting into writing, you're getting to other areas which were related to fashion.
Well, in the last 35 years of my research work, I've gone to areas in Bengal which do embroidery, weaving areas all over the country, printing areas, tie-dye areas, and areas where they do folk embroidery. I mean, the country is enormously rich. You won't be able to do it in a lifetime. And everywhere I went, I found that a lot of the highest crafts of textiles were patronized by the royalty because they obviously had the money and the taste to do it. Banaras in itself, down the Ganges, you have the Darbhanga Palace, the Jaipur Riyasat, the Banaras palace there. All the palaces were down the Ganga, and each one had a dedicated 20 looms or 30 looms, each one doing both the men and women's clothes for their riyasat. Now, we are bad historians in India. We are bad documenters. We don't document anything. So when I did for instance, my research in the Banaras weaves, trying to revive those, that's the last thing I'm doing now, is I found 100 years of absence for a craftsperson. He doesn't know what his grandparents or craftsperson used to weave, because very few of them can afford to keep a sample. They always sell them.
But they're under stress also. Frankly, I visited Banaras recently, for example.
They have been under stress since the colonial times, when most of the crafts were actually killed. And they moved to Lancashire, the cotton production moved to Lancashire. The fabrics used to come back to India for us to consume. So there was a big break in the link. And wherever I went, I found some old fabrics, the old saris, and I take it to the weavers, and they'd never seen them before. So I said, now this is ridiculous. Somebody has to document what the royalty used to wear, because thereby, by documenting that, you have to some extent documented the best there was of textile crafts in this country.
That's a very brilliant exercise that you're engaged with, I think. So, when we talk about influence of fashion, especially in Hindi cinema, how would you really look at it? I mean, cinema has tried to have its own fashion statement and style. For example, we're just seeing promo of Sanjay Leela Bansali's work, and sometimes they play with costumes. Do you think they are really respecting the Puritanism, or do you think that they have their own, style?
Well, I think what you're talking about is vintage costumes. Vintage costumes, again, we don't have enough reference, and we don't have enough recorded history to actually figure out what. When I did Deepa Mehta's Midnight Children, I had the worst time trying to figure out what costumes they wore in Srinagar in the 1920s when they got married. There's no record. That was one of the reasons I wrote that book. But having said that, the Indian movies have tried, either through some sort of reading or some sort of impressions or verbal histories that they could get, from Mughal-e-Azam down to even the last film that you're talking about. There have been serious attempts, some successful, some not very successful. But what they have contrived to do is reintroduce a sense of indigenous clothing into the Bollywood world.
No, I mean, do you think there's a clear sense of what they're doing in terms of...
Not a very clear sense. But also there have been some films which are completely wild and off the ball. But having said that, by the fact that they are so influential, and they have introduced a lot of layered clothing, wedding clothing, all sorts of festive clothing onto the screen, which you don't see in any other international movie scene. I don't say they're aesthetic, I don't say they're purist, I don't even think they're all well researched, but the attempt that has been made is reintroducing to a large extent an indigenous handwriting.
Okay. Talking about our weddings, in fact, and festivals, how would you really look at it? Are people really making their own dress styles, fashion statements, or do you see some kind of understanding there as well?
Well, I think Indian weddings at one time were very, very classical and conventional according to the area that the wedding was taking place. The Gujaratis wore white and red, the Bengalis had a certain Banarsi sari that they wore, South India, of course, there were only Kanjivarams, etc. Now, there always in India has been a great sense of festivity around a wedding. These are not underplayed things at all, ever. They've never been. But at the moment, it has gone into theatre mode. So, it's a free-for-all. If you'd like to wear a Kanjivaram one day, fine. If you want to wear a gown that was worn by Audrey Hepburn in Paris for one of your weddings, it's also fine. So actually, the multiple occasions that our weddings are doing today have really pushed Indian fashion further up.
Really?
I'm not saying that all of it is in great taste. I'm not saying that I prescribe to it all. But it is keeping the Shamiana walas, the food industry, everything going. So it's
vibrant. It's a vibrant atmosphere.
It's vibrant and it's festive. And it's a celebratory thing.
Tell us about your own inspiration and influences. I mean, you travel all around the world. You're well known in terms of your own field and you take interest. I mean, these are the varied interests that you are into, whether it's culture, heritage, textile, fashion, or name it. I mean, maybe we'll talk about also your other interests that are developing. But talk to us about your influences and inspirations. I mean,
well, I was extremely influenced by the professionalism in our business outside India. There was a certain question of quality that they wanted in their clothes, question of cutting, draping, which of course being in India we were not exposed to, and we just didn't have clothes which fit anybody. They were just layered clothes one over the other, and there was a lot of embroidery and embellishment. And that always hit me, that something very simple can be equally lovely. You know, you could cut a khadi kurta asymmetrically and very beautifully without throwing the whole bucket and the crystals on it. And you know, I found that very refreshing. So I tried to blend the two. You know, with fabulous textiles that we have and seeing where we could make it so that it doesn't end up as your traditional salwar kameez, but at the same time it still has the flow and fun of India. So that's a challenge.
You know, you're a magician with fabric, but tell us which is a good fabric? I mean, which is something that you like?
Oh, I'm so happy I can't answer that with one word. There are so many. But really and truly, the best Indian fabrics are the saris that drape and not the saris that are stiff. So actually, there is a quality within Indian fabrics, which perhaps a lot of the spaces we've lost, which we need to get back to. Because I don't think lycra is the answer to our world, because we live in a very hot country and actually we don't want to look as if we are an army walking in black and lycra. Neither do we want to have the younger generation. They spend a lot of their time in the gym. They don't want to have a baggy, ill-fitting garment either. So we have to find a blend somewhere in the middle.
Okay. So what are these activities and projects that currently you're on with? I mean,
well, I'm very involved in a fairly serious intervention or involvement with the weaves of Banaras, the ikats in Bhuj, and the handloom weaving in Bhagalpur and the khadi. These are 3 or 4 areas that I've worked on before, not very successfully. I think somewhere I didn't know what to do, and all of them need a great deal of technology, which was not really something that I knew enough about. So now I've got in people who understand textile weaving, like Rahul Jain, and they're all in the field with me, and we are trying to see how we can get back to the original Banarsi sari and not this stiff, over-embellished, over-zaried.
Talk about the brand, Ritu, and you know, I'll also take this chance to talk about your life. I mean, how you really nicely juggled between, let's say, professional, personal life, and how you're taking it, giving it a better shape also as of now. So talk about this journey also, your personal one.
Well, as a woman, I think that juggling is perennial, is going to last every generation that comes or has gone by, because if you want to have a family life, you want to have children, there are going to be a lot of times that you're guilty at work and you're guilty at home. And that is when the children are growing up, your time is always going to be very tight to manage. And it is I think it's a very brave act. Not every woman should go out and do it, because it's scary, it's very tiring, and also it does take you away from many years of your children's growing up, which you could have been very happy sitting at home and looking at. Having said that, I've had a very enriching life, because I think my work has given me so much back that I wouldn't like it any other way.
And what is the road ahead? I mean, what are your dreams that you're trying to tread on? What is this path that you want to take?
I have a lot more traveling to do. I'm writing a book, or 2 books actually, it'll end up being, doing my textile journey, so that people know where these things are. And tomorrow, it's all there still. If you want to see Rakhee embroideries, you have 15,000 women still embroidering in Kutch. If you want to see Zardozi embroideries, they are sitting in Bengal, and they are not 1 or 2. They are in thousands. We have 16 million craftspeople in this country actually working on their crafts. So my 2 books are going to be almost a travelogue and a journey through India's craft sectors.
And also about, again, talking about women, and talking about where we talked about a little bit about beauty pageants, for example, and how sometimes we feel that whether women are becoming a trap somewhere in this whole world of how to be seen or looked at as, so objectifying, for example, at times also. How do you really look at the kind of balance which should be maintained?
I think the balance has to come with the understanding that today's women have a very wide range option of professions. At one time, it was a teacher.
Let's say modeling, for example, or walking.
Modeling is one part of a profession that women do. And some would love to have that as a profession, or becoming a movie star, and some may not want that profession. So take it as what it is. It's a profession, and it's a profession all over the world. There are no strictures whether you should or you should not. It is an option that you take as a woman. If you happen to be right for the modeling career, some people have made a fabulous job of their modeling careers. So I don't think, we should define what our impressions or our morals are onto someone else. That's also a freedom that a woman should enjoy, to take that option.
True. And last, your formula to good dressing, I mean, simply put, for a girl.
Be comfortable in your skin. That's basically the most important one. I mean, if you're going to be worrying about what other people think about the way you're looking, it's a very hard climb. Just be very comfortable with what your choices are, and you look fine, actually.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ritu Kumar.
Sure.
It's really been a delight, and
wonderful.
What a great conversation we had about beauty, about women, about life, society and economy, and it's been a real pleasure for me as an interviewer to talk to you here. And that was such an interesting journey that we had in this conversation with Ms. Ritu Kumar. Hope you enjoyed this particular edition of The Quest on Rajya Sabha TV. Thank you for watching. Namaskar and bye-bye.